The quiet catastrophe, one that's received far less attention than it should, which strikes at the heart of any free society, is the eradication of journalism in Russia, the sentencing of four Russian journalists, Antonia Favorskaya, Konstantin Gabov, Sergei Karelin, and Artyom Krygo, to 5.5 years each in prison, is astonishing. Their crime, not espionage, not incitement to violence, but simply their job, doing their job, journalism. And all four were charged with participating in the activities of an extremist organisation, namely alliance with Alexei Navalny's Anti-Corruption Foundation, which the Kremlin officially banned in 2021. This was the same foundation that exposed state theft, challenged cronyism, dared to speak in unflinching detail about the luxurious lives of Putin's inner circle and the property portfolio that Putin and his cronies have amassed. Their trial, held behind closed doors since October 2024, ended this week in the Nagatinsky District Court in Moscow, and the accused never denied their professional involvement in covering Navalny's work. They did, however, deny any association with extremism. What they did, filming street interviews, producing segments for YouTube, reporting on protests and funerals, was journalism in its most essential form. And for this, they've now been in prison. Now, I have to put my cards on the table. When I lived and worked in Moscow, for a short while, I taught in a journalist school, and I taught, I did lectures on the ethics of journalism, and I was quite shocked at the way that the state manipulated journalism even back then. This was before 2019. I was also shocked to be myself involved in a case where I found and I proved that I had been dubbed with words that I never said. In my case, these words weren't very important, either the words I said or the words that I was made to say, that were put into my mouth. But I think that the Russian state was trialing its techniques and using me as a guinea pig. But I was aware then, and I'm certainly aware now, and I follow what's going on, and I was a great supporter of Navalny and what he was exposing. And I'm very much aware that the system is corrupt, and I saw that corruption growing, despite the extraordinary professionalism of the journalists that I met and that I worked with in Russia and that I taught. And the implications of this, therefore, the implications of this trial today, journalism in Russia is no longer a profession, it's an act of defiance. That's a fact. Real journalism. To report independently, to publish truthfully, is to risk being branded a terrorist. One of the convicted, Sergei Karelin, formerly a freelancer of the Associated Press, captured this irony perfectly. In a closing statement, he said, "Remorse is considered a mitigating circumstance. It's the criminals who need remorse. But I am in prison for honest journalism, for the love of my family and my country." His colleague Artyom Krygo was blunter. "I am on the registry of extremists and terrorists simply because I did my job." Favorskaya, meanwhile, stood accused of the grievous act documenting Navalny's prison abuse and were still helping to organise his funeral. Russia now ranks 162nd out of 180 countries in press freedom. At least 40 journalists are currently imprisoned, and the punishment doesn't end with the cell door. Beyond prison, these four have been banned from running websites for 3 years after their release, effectively barring them from returning to their work, returning to journalism. And why does it matter? Because it reveals the Kremlin's strategy. If you cannot kill a man's words, kill the profession that allows them to be spoken. The state is not simply silencing voices, it's destroying the very infrastructure that supports public truth-telling. And the collapse is systematic. Independent media outlets have either been shut down or forced into exile. Military censorship laws now criminalize any mention of the war in Ukraine that deviates from official propaganda. It is no longer enough to be silent. One must participate in the theatre of compliance or disappear. And Navalny's trial and others like it are not merely about dissent. They're about control over legacy. Alexei Navalny is dead, mysteriously, brutally, and conveniently while in prison. But his ghost haunts the Kremlin, and those who attended his funeral, who filmed it, those who whispered his name in tribute, are being made examples of. The Russian state is rewriting its past and preemptively silencing its future. Journalism as a memory machine stands in its way. Navalny's widow, his former lawyers, and now his chroniclers have all been prosecuted, and Russia's legal apparatus has become less a tool of justice and more a weaponized obituary service. Of course, the government insists it's acting within the bounds of national security. Extremist organizations must be curtailed, they argue. Journalists collaborating with such groups must face consequences. This line might carry some weight if there were evidence, actual, real evidence of incitement to violence or threats to public order, but there isn't. Instead, we have camera crews and notepads treated as contraband. We have bylines treated like criminal records. We have freelancers hauled into court for the simple act of speaking to the wrong people, asking the wrong questions. This isn't national security. This is national paranoia. This is the USSR revived. Even within Russia, there's a common ground among rights activists, independent lawyers, and even some foreign correspondents still operating in the country. This is part of a broader pattern. Since 2022, the targeting of anyone, even tangentially linked to Navalny, has intensified. This includes not just journalists, but defense lawyers, civil rights activists, and even citizens caught attending vigils. Memorial, the embattled Russian human rights organization, well disseminated around Russia, now designates over 900 individuals as political prisoners. 4 of them are named here: Favorskaya, Garbov, Karelin, and Kryga. Their names may be less familiar than Navalny's, but that doesn't make them less significant. Their imprisonment is not simply a story of repression, it's a warning. When truth becomes illegal, ignorance is institutionalized. In the end, these 4 journalists are not on trial. Journalism itself is. And these 4 journalists are just representatives of a huge network of individuals who quietly are standing up against this regime. For now, in Russia, journalism looks as if it's lost. The courtroom verdict was merely the formalization of a collapse already underway. But collapse is not the end. Collapse may be followed by renewal if we pay attention, if we bear witness, if we remember the names not only of the famous, but of those who filmed them, of those who recorded what they said. This is the postscript to Alexei Navalny's execution, assassination, and to his burial. He is not finished. He is not finished. His example lives on, and these journalists are testament to that.